Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Man, We're Too Old for This, here on the Nerd Eternal Network. I'll be your host for the evening, or day, morning, or whenever you're watching this. The experienced some call Jason, and with me as usual is...
The Todd Clock.
CDO113.
And the token, not a token stereotype, Tarky.
So the token, not a token.
Exactly. You always gotta have one.
And today we're going to be talking about...
Right off the cliff real early.
And today we're going to be talking about racism in comics. Mostly the history of racism, but you know, once we get modern day, assuming we don't run out of time before we get to the modern day, we'll cover some of the current tropes, I guess you could call it.
Wait. You mean there's racism in comics today? What?
Oh, I'm sorry, we were going to surprise you. Oh, right. So comics, superhero comics, what we're mostly going to be talking about. Though in the early days there was a wide variety. But basically, they started in 1938 with Superman, as far as the superheroes go. So we would be, I guess we'll be starting off talking about the 40s. Because, you know, Superman was around, 2 years?
Yeah.
So you had, him and a couple of others that popped up, in 1939. Most of your initial big superhero boom, though, was in the 40s. And in the 40s, you had, of course, the Second World War started up. So you had...
For those of you in Europe, it's a couple years after World War II started up.
Yes. I don't know if we got anybody listening in Europe, but yes, it would be. So you had stereotypes of Germans, but they were never quite as bad as, like, the stereotypes of the Japanese. If you've ever seen any of the old political cartoons, there's a certain sort of caricature they would do of Japanese that post-war they also tended to do for the Chinese. That was very prevalent in comics. Superman had covers where they were talking about, they were advertising basically war bonds, and they had a kind of a catchphrase, I guess. I won't say the slur they used, but he was talking about Superman slapping him, and it rhymed with slap. I'll let you figure it out. And really, I think there were several slurs they used, just on the covers. And people will sometimes make the excuse that, well, we were at war with him at the time, this, that, and the other. I'll bring it back up when we get to the 70s. Well, the 50s and then the 70s.
But they were men of their time.
The problem with that also falls back. I've never served in the military, but my father did, and I know Todd's did. When in the military, you're taught they demoralize whoever's the enemy.
They dehumanize.
They dehumanize.
And they don't just do that in the military. They do that with propaganda for the maggot populace too.
Yeah. But for the soldier, you have to think of them as an it, not a they. And to get money, to raise money for funds or this, that, whatever, they would also start that propaganda campaign in the cities and towns and for the basic metropolis of a nation. And it was like, okay.
It's not something unique to America
it's not
or
unique
to the World War period. I mean, the Romans did it back in the day. The colonial powers did it, trying to make people think, the Caribbean was full of cannibals, or Africa was full of cannibals.
China did it to Japan when Japan met China. It happened.
Yeah.
And it continued to happen.
And unfortunately, it's something that's, I think, where a lot of our modern day racism, and bigotry comes from, because it's like, okay, you look at this person as not human for how long, but now you're telling me they're human again. It's an issue. Just pointing that out there.
And
I'm still waiting to be human then. Because we wasn't at war. We wasn't human.
I agree.
And
it's an issue. Like I said, it's still an issue today.
that's I guess a way to segue into because I specifically mentioned Japanese during the 40s, but black folks were not well represented during
Oh,
the
hell
40s.
no.
You tended to have characters, Marvel's Bucky and the Young Allies. You had the black character was named Whitewash. In the Spirit, his name, the character was
Ebony White.
Ebony White. If you're noticing a pattern with the names, all of them tended to do that.
Yeah.
And they'd be these little, usually about yay tall compared to normal size everybody else's.
The kind of strange thing about Will Eisner's The Spirit, Ebony White, when you see him, he's a stereotypical kind of pickaninny type of the day. He was also the smartest person in the damn book. He didn't speak in the kind of buckwheat talk kind of thing. He was articulate. He was the smartest person in the book. His look was fucked up.
Which was something Eisner fought against, and that was just fighting loss.
Yeah.
He tried to compensate by having the character be very smart, by having the other characters treat him respectfully. And that's why Eisner does not catch a whole lot of crap about
hell
it.
for it. Yeah.
He was having to work in the time that he lived in.
Yeah.
And so, he kind of gets credit for doing what he could, I guess. I had another few examples, but...
The Shazam sidekick would be one.
I assume he had the same stereotypical look.
Yeah, he had the same stereotypical look. He was... Shazam, I think, had saved
Captain
him.
Marvel at the time.
Yeah, Captain Marvel at the time. Had saved him. And then had him working at the radio station for Billy Batson. And he was literally Billy Batson's, step and fetch. I mean...
Yeah.
And then Shazam would show up to go, oh, hey, so, and then go on the adventure. But even the other Marvel family members treated him poorly. It was not like, oh, you're a person. No, you're a background, go fetch and step character.
Yeah, well, that was the one distinction Ebony White had, was he tended to be the one that was not treated like that. I'm not sure how Whitewash was treated in Young Allies. I don't know that I've ever actually read any of the old ones.
The only time I've ever seen the Young Allies was in a reprint, and they were all too busy trying to fight the Germans to mistreat each other. But I will say this about the rest of the Young Allies: they were a like one kid was Irish, I think it was, and he was the stereotypical Irish person. You had whatever trope that comes along about a particular country
Italian or
that
Irishman.
was what they they bared down on it 200% for that one character. And it's like, oh my God.
The intention there was probably to be just shorthand, so kind of what you're dealing with, and to make each character have some variety. Where the black caricatures they would do at the time was kind of on
you
a
didn't
whole
get to be
level.
human.
Yeah, the caricatures were a lot worse for a black character.
If I could cut in real quick for a more recent version of that kind of you shorthand a character real fast would be the Call of Duty Zombies. You had your 4 characters, Dempsey, Richtofen, Takio, and Nikolai. Yeah, they were all a shorthand Russian, a shorthand American, a shorthand German, a shorthand Japanese guy. For World War II. They were all had they were all hard stereotypes.
But you're dealing with a 3D shooter. How much time would you have to flesh out individual characters?
Basically, it was they've been in a lot lot of games.
But true, but when they started, they didn't necessarily know they were going to do a zombies mode in every game.
Yeah. It's jumping.
Well, they made those 4 characters when they realized we will be making a lot of content for this. Because the first two levels of the game, the first one was originally, then there was DLC, didn't have. They had voice lines but no characters attached to them. Then in the third one, they brought in these 4 characters, knowing they were going ahead with a storyline.
The trick is, if you have a shorthand, basically when you jump forward to Nick Fury and his Howling Commandos, the difference is Gabe was human. You still had Dino, his name's Dino something, that was Italian.
Yeah.
You had the stereotypes as far as nationality, and it was a hodgepodge of people. But when you got to Gabe, yeah, he was human.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the difference you see in these others is, yeah, if you wasn't white, it's different flavors of white and then that thing that's not human.
Yeah, I wasn't saying shorthand, like
Yeah.
racist shorthand, just as an example
Yeah.
of more recent shorthanding of characters.
Yeah.
And while Gabe was a World War II character, Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos came out in the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you could, you literally in the 40s, you'd have the companies claim, that they couldn't publish. That was, I think, the argument they gave.
The big argument back in those days when it came to movies, comics, anything is, well, we couldn't get it sold in the South.
Mm.
That was
they literally would not sell.
That was always the big excuse.
For a more
Well,
recent example, look towards homosexuality, and we can't sell that in China.
Yeah.
Him mentioning can't sell that in the South made me think of the Humphrey Bogart movie.
Booga! His ghost.
Casablanca. Played again Sam, the piano player.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He was, they wanted to make Sam's character even more stereotypical, watermelon eating kind of thing. And Bogart's like, no. He's, he doesn't live in America. He lives here. He's an intelligent guy. He, helps run the bar. He's a musician. And it's like, no, his lines are going to be delivered normal, cadence, pace,
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was cool when I read that. And another side note on a stereotypical character Gone with the Wind, when the black actress that played
Hattie McDaniel.
when she won her award, they weren't going to let her accept it, and the guy that played
Clark Gable.
Clark Gable, he was like, no, you're going to let her accept it at such and such location, or I won't be there. And it come out years later that he had black in his ancestry, and people were like, but he was like,
You mean we could have hated him too?
yeah,
You had a few from back.
Birth
back
of a
in the
Nation
day.
told us that them passing ones was the ones you had to worry about.
And you had
That's literally what that's about.
he wasn't the only actor from that period and not much more, but more recently that you found out kind of after their career was over that
Carol Channing kept it to her deathbed. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a Negro.
yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Dolly and Dee, you bastards.
But before we jump into the 60s, though, in the 50s, you had portrayal of black characters wasn't much better, if any better. But you also had the kind of yellow peril, they'd call it.
Yep.
Which, that had started up in the 40s. You had, and truthfully, in the 30s, like Fu Manchu, which was a pulp character. But you had the best example I can think of how they were doing really any variety of Asian in the 50s would be the Yellow Claw comic. It was named for the villain, who was a Fu Manchu style villain, who had some of the facial caricatures going on of kind of the World War II era, and was always colored in a bright lemon yellow.
Yep.
The book was named for the villain. The hero of the book was Jimmy Woo, who is still a Marvel character running around. You'll still see him running around off and on.
And he's in the MCU. He was in
Yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp, and he's going to be in, was it WandaVision?
Yeah.
He's supposed to show up.
Yeah, I don't care much for the movie version of it. Funny character, just bad version of Jimmy Woo. Anyway, now he was not drawn in any particular caricature fashion, but he was still colored in that bright lemon yellow. Every Asian character in the book was.
And they did that all the way through the 60s and into the 70s some.
Yeah,
You still have that.
Hal Jordan's buddy. Did they even call him Pie anymore?
I don't read Green Lantern, but yeah, it's...
Yeah, I know for a while they had shortened it to just Pie. But anyway, so when you get to the 60s, you had Green Lantern had kind of a, not a heroing sidekick exactly, but kind of one of his supporting characters was Asian, and they just flat out called him Pie Face. which was it a slur specifically against the Chinese or Japanese? I'm trying to remember if it was specific or that was just kind of one they throw around at anybody.
In that kind of thing, it tends to be just anybody. Because when it comes to America, they can't tell the difference. So it's whatever the hell you are, take this one.
Get used to racism.
Well, I knew some slurs you had were specific to Chinese versus specific to Japanese.
But don't worry, if you have to hedge your bets, just hedge your bet on racism being lazy and it just being a catch-all.
Yeah.
And he had the whole facial caricature stuff going on, and then you can watch him progress, into the. I'm not sure exactly when the cutoff was, but by the time you started getting into the 70s, well, he looked more like a normal Chinese fella or Japanese, whichever one he's supposed to be. But they were still calling him Pie Face, I think, until either just about the 80s or the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they just started calling him Pie.
And
which, it's not really fixing.
Well, it stops the new readers from knowing what it is until they go and ask
That's
an
true.
old reader.
I mean, as a child, I had no idea that was a slur or had even heard of it.
Some of that comes from, hell, you finally got somebody in there that wasn't white that went, that's fucked up, right? You putting that in a kid's book.
Yeah.
And it's really just that damn bad, because once we get to the 70s, I can tell you a little bit about when Jon Stewart finally made his appearance in Green Lantern, and the inker was actually going back and forth with his creator about him not being colored with black ink. It was like, well, black people are brown, right? We'll have brown. Oh, well, don't you think they'll get offended that it's not? No, because how many black people have you seen that are literally black? It's...
Yeah. Well, going back to the 50s and 60s for a moment, during that Yellow Peril thing, it even crossed into like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. It wasn't just your war comics that were doing this. Your hero.
No, it was just Asian.
It was just a portrayal of the
It was
people.
just a portrayal
the way they
of
portrayed
the
the people
Asian
at the
characters.
time.
And the heroes didn't just, or the art. It wasn't just the artists. It was the way they spoke about the character. They would use every kind of Asian racial slur towards them that they could, and it was like, there's one book where Batman literally pushes a statue off on a group of, I don't know if it was Chinese or Japanese people, and crushes them. And it's like, in an article I saw, it was like, oh, it's okay for Batman to kill the Asian fellow, huh? He wouldn't kill the gangster in Gotham, but this guy, he pushed the thing, and you could tell because there's a puddle of blood. It's like, okay. And, so it's not just...
And if you called them on it, it was always they were the enemy.
Yeah.
The Japanese, they were the enemy during the war. After the war, once China went communist, well, they're commie bastards.
Yep.
Where you would have stereotypical Russians as, the commie bastard bad guys. But they never were really physical caricatures,
Most of the Russians or Germans that you had drawn, 90% of them had a stereotypical white, clean cut face.
And they might have a very stereotypical way of speaking.
Right. And you may have one or two goons that had that, menacing, it looks more like a bear, it looks more like, a brick wall or whatever.
A lot of your Russian characters tend to be, the men at least, tend to be big like that.
They tend to be the Rhino.
And
yeah, they were Rhino.
And it was like, okay, I see this, what you're going for here. Even if I haven't read a word of this, okay, he's supposed to be a Russian. Oh, he's supposed to be a German. But the way they were drawn wasn't racist. The way they were portrayed was, but again, that's going back to war propaganda, or these are our enemy. Don't trust them.
And in the comic medium, especially through there, they're really writing them, for younger folks. You wanted the kid to be able to look at the page and go, "That's the bad guy."
Yeah.
So you had these certain tropes they would fall into, and that's not a defense of it. That's just kind of an explanation.
And during the war, the troops were, had an option to read
Mhm.
comic books. So it's like, oh, if I see somebody that looks like this, kill them, gotcha. You know, and it was
Well, it reinforced the whole
yeah,
propaganda.
it was reinforcing the whole thing.
And it was how the comic companies got around the like paper rationing and stuff.
Yeah.
So their businesses were not hurt as bad by the rationing in World War II. Let's see. First black superhero was of course Black Panther in '61.
Was it technically was it Turok or Tuvok in Legion of Superheroes, wasn't it?
DC didn't get a black superhero till the 70s.
Yeah.
John Stewart is literally the first black superhero in DC.
Quickly followed by Black Lightning.
No, you truthfully have Panther, Storm, and Falcon before you have Stewart.
Yeah.
Stewart's fourth. And Black Panther was in 68.
Was it '68? Okay.
Yeah,
That's right, because Fantastic Four
'cause-
was getting started in 61 or so. Yeah,
68.
Yeah.
Because the 50th anniversary of that character and the 50th anniversary of the actual Black Panther the same year. That was 2018.
So the comic character was out
Now-
first.
Not a comic book superhero, but if I remember this correctly, wasn't the first black put into a comic book that didn't have the quote unquote, sucking watermelon look. Wasn't it a cowboy character?
Mhm.
What was it? What was the character's name?
Well, maybe out of one of the big two. Technically, back in the 40s,
Because you had black comic books.
You had
Yeah.
I've read an issue. Well, the only issue that got published.
It was Lobo.
Lobo.
That was
Yeah.
the name.
All Negro comics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was it had a couple of comedy stories. You had kind of a trench coated fedora detective story. You had Lion Man, who was kind of he was a Tarzan type, but not the Lost in the Jungle. He was like college trained in the U.S. and then sent to some spot in Africa to defend because they were like a uranium depositor or something. You didn't want enemies to. Can't remember if it was Germans at the time. It was in the 40s, but it may have been after the war, so it may have been the commies at that point. I forget exactly. But that was a group of black writers and artists had gotten together to do that.
Yeah.
I have yet to be able to find out why there was only the one issue. I don't know if it just sold poorly, or if there was pressure put on them to
Or hell, no, this damn place, hell, it killed everybody involved.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember the name of the book, but it one of the black published books. They got one issue out, and you had one of the artists or writers had threats against his family. The press company that actually rolled it off the presses was firebombed.
Yeah,
And
they do
you
that kind
had
of shit.
basically you had a bunch of businessmen go in and financially ruin
Yeah.
some of the others.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it was like,
stuff back in the day.
But
I
anyway,
mean, arguably even today, but that's we can get into all those other.
but yeah, you had like I said, you had Panther in '68. You had Storm, I think it was a year or two after, and then Falcon was a little bit after her. But yeah,
Did Falcon come after Storm?
No, you're right. Falcon was second. Storm was third.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the all different X-Men came out in the 70s.
Yeah.
it was set was 72.
I don't think it was that early in the 70s. I think Storm's a little later. I think you moved Storm up.
Okay, and Falcon I think was probably at 72.
Yeah, he may have been.
Trick is, I know you got those three before you got John Stewart.
No, Stewart was also in the 70s. So.
They took 4 years and went, they can read?
Pretty much.
Well,
No, they knew that to begin with.
Yeah.
That's one reason they, you didn't want the stereotypes. Them break into those stereotypical characters.
and I can remember seeing an article that was an interview with Stan Lee, and they were talking about like Black Panther and Storm and Falcon, and when him and Kirby sat down to start introducing characters other than like, hey, he works at the newspaper officer. Hey, he's just a soldier that Cap talks to every now and then. It was one of those things of, we want to introduce these characters with, they're not stupid. They're not they each had a list of things they wanted to introduce the character capable of. And even then, with some of the seniors people at the comic book place, they were fighting an uphill battle.
But yeah, it's not, that's not rare. And I won't completely go into it, but even with a character like Panther, you still have kind of the, what do they call it? Basically the noble beast thing to it. In other words,
The noble savage.
the noble savage kind of thing. Yeah, it's a magic part of Africa. The rest of it's, goddamn jungle as fuck, but it's this one mythical kind of something in the middle of it, hidden from everybody else.
Yeah, and you've mentioned before Wakanda had dinosaurs and stuff back
Yeah,
then.
yeah. Hell, you read when he got jungle action and shit like that. Yeah, parts of fucking Wakanda had fucking T-Rexes and shit running around in. The white ape that M'Baku got his powers from. Yeah, it's a Mighty Joe Young style, like sometimes four-armed something. It ain't, it's Mars. It's some shit that you find on Mars that you beat up and you eat its, because his origin is basically, he killed one and ate its meat. He ate the flesh and bathed in his blood, and when he got out of it, he could lift 10 tons.
And then he wore its skin. Some
Yeah,
good
when he wears its skin. They'll flight. But it's a hell of a reward if you win.
But largely they succeeded with Panther though, because he kicked ass.
Yeah,
In his initial run, in his initial appearance, his initial run with Avengers. Now later in the 70s and into the 80s, in his second run,
his second run of Avengers, when he was in the Avengers in the 70s, David Michelinie, you could tell he didn't like character for shit, because
Him and Beast got knocked out.
they got knocked out.
it was a race. Who could get knocked out
yeah,
first.
who's gonna get knocked out first? But they were going to get knocked out. He would knock Panther out, but hell, you had Graviton like catch Cap's shield, couldn't break it, and when he tosses it to the side, knocks Panther out. It's just like, God damn. Because that was the trick. Is I actually I'd read the Priest run in the 90s, and because I was trying to collect the Korvac saga and that fight with Graviton's in it, and I'm reading Panther and that, and I'm like, my God, sucked in the 70s. And then when you get to so when I got a chance to read his first runs in Avengers in the 60s, I was braced. I was like, oh God, if it's that damn bad in the 70s, Jesus Christ, what's he gonna be in this?
Yeah.
And he kicked 50 to 11 different flavors of ass in there. I was shocked. I was like, how in the hell did he kick this much ass?
Story wise, he was brought in as cast replacement, and he lived up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the events of the 80s where it was like, oh, me and Beast got knocked out. Was it Hudlin or Priest that did the run where he was basically
Priest,
acting as a spy,
Priest thing was, and this is something that if you notice, even to the day, if you see a cover of Avengers, Panther is usually in the background. You have Cap, Thor, and Panther be over here to the side, or crouched or something like that. And it's noticeable. And you had his villain, Akabi, basically go, you're the king of the realm, why in the hell are you in the back of every picture? What are you doing, carrying the Avengers bags or something? And that was when Priest did the thing where it was like, I ain't trying to be seen. Because I'm spying on their ass. That's the only reason why they would join.
Seeing how our technology matches up against theirs.
Well, just in case they were threatened.
You got them up and they can fly and shoot lightning and shit. I want to keep an eye on that.
Was Luke Cage out before?
I want to say Cage is after Stewart.
I think he's after Stewart, but before Black Lightning.
Yeah.
But anyway, you had a story about when they brought Stewart in.
Oh, I was just saying. I ended up saying it. You know, the hell that he caught, even to the way the character was colored in the damn thing, was controversial. They really. I think it was Schwartz that created him. They really had to drag Stewart in the Green Lantern. Damn, they're kicking and screaming.
Didn't one of them go down the hall and get somebody that worked
Yeah,
in the building and
they
said,
had,
look, this
yeah,
person's black.
Well,
this is
they
what
had
the skin
they
looks
had
like.
to they went through hell to get him even introduced. It doesn't look like Marvel had quite as bad a time with that kind of shit. Marvel's dark period for those characters, for the most part, was late 70s, 80s. Because you got writers that were, like I said, Panther during that run was getting knocked out all the time. He leaves and you get Falcon as an affirmative action hire.
Yeah.
And that, when you read that his arc, Falcon's first arc in Avengers, they don't finish that in any kind of way that's any kind of way, you know, they forced Falcon on the team, because that was the thing. Falcon was not trying to be an Avenger. And Garrett comes in and goes, okay, you can have 7 members, this. And you had Hawkeye there like he wanted to be an Avenger, and he goes, and Falcon. And they're like, what? What the hell? Why the hell are you picking Falcon? He was like, because the U.S. government is running this, and you got to have minorities on the team, and you don't have any. And
You had to have so many women, and
well, no. You have to have a minority on the team. He specifically did that.
That's
as
right.
an affirmative action. Falcon was taking a job from the more qualified white guy that was supposed to be the dude with the bow and arrow. Because that was me reading it. Was like, well, they go, well, Falcon's, he's not an Avenger, and you know all these guys are winged. Yeah, Falcon's a lame character, but he's taking the place of a dude with a bow and arrow. The motherfucker, he's lame as shit too. It ain't like they replaced Thor with Falcon. They replaced the dude with a fucking archaic weapon with Falcon. Who the fuck cares?
Like, real talk.
So you had, and the trick was, when you read that run, Falcon didn't want to be on the team. Cap had to beg him, please come on there. And Falcon comes on and is like doing the full slave thing every chance he gets. Well, I sure enough be here, master. He's doing that because he want to be on the damn team. When he goes to Hawkeye, basically going, dude, I don't want to be here. Hawkeye mistreats Falcon. You dirty rotten so-and-so, and it's like, he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, mistreats Falcon because he's on the team. And you kind of sit there and go, nobody's mad at Gyrick. Everybody took it out on the black dude that every time he opens his mouth goes, I don't particularly want to be here. And the first chance he got to deuce out, he left. That is literally the Falcon on Avengers, his first run. And you kind of sit there and go, so ain't nobody ever going to call any of these bastards on that. Cap's your friend, but you ain't never going to go to Hawkeye and go, what the fuck wrong with you, dude? I had to beg this cat to be on this son of a bitch so we don't lose our damn charter. And rather than be mad at the red-haired white guy that can throw your ass in the gulag, you mad at the black dude that really is doing us a fucking favor.
Well, everybody got it.
But nobody steps to Gyrick.
Yes.
Nobody steps to Gyrick until, when they do that storyline in the late 90s, where you have Falcon finally punch him in his mouth.
the only other person you ever see stand up to Gyrick in any fashion was Black Panther, and Gyrick's mouthing off at him.
Panther don't give a fuck about Gyrick because,
but he says something to Panther or about black people or whatever, and Panther turns, choose your next words carefully. As sovereign of Wakanda, you're not just speaking to an Avenger, you're speaking to a king. And Gyrick is like, and walks off.
Yeah. He wouldn't.
See, that Avengers team followed the rule the Homelander tells in The Boys. You don't with the money.
Pretty much.
It's really the security clearance they're concerned about.
Yeah.
Stark was always bankrolled the Avengers.
Yeah.
Other than maybe in the 90s when they were basically a branch of the U.S. government.
Yeah. that was the whole thing back in those days. Was if they didn't have their security clearance, they couldn't fly a Quinjet. They could. It was all kinds of crap.
Yeah.
They could, because like when they go fight Korvac, they have to take a bus.
Which is messed up in and of itself.
You have a bus show up, and the Avengers get off the bus.
It's really that bus driver.
That's where City of
like,
Heroes got the idea for the trains. Brilliant.
bus
What
driver
a
sitting there
shout-out.
driving the Avengers. I'm either real safe or real in danger. Cause
Okay, so we've gotten into the 70s, and we are running out of time.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to specifically say about the 80s, 90s, aughts, or teens?
Just that the stereotype. Yeah, we almost need to round two, because the thing is, you still have the same stereotypes now. They just tweak it. You know, you go like I was complaining with you with New Avengers. Yeah, you had Luke Cage. It was like, oh man, Luke Cage is prominent. And they go, hey, look, it's a diversity cookie. Luke Cage couldn't whip a white dude in a fight. He never beat a white dude in a fight. If it was Luke Cage against a white guy, Luke Cage lost. Hell, they've had Luke Cage lose to a white dude that fucking Iron Fist comes up and beats. Iron Fist wasn't never the muscle of that team. He was the scalpel. Luke was the brick. Danny was scared of Luke. Luke, his thing was, you fuck around and get Luke pissed off, and Luke breaks shit. I can hit you with my fist once a day. Luke can hit you with a steel hard fist at any given time, at any given measure, and he can do it repeatedly. But, yeah, that was kind of my thing during the aughts was when Falcon becomes Captain America, he gets his ass kicked for 6 issues before he finally fights Sin when she was running around as a Red Skull, and he barely manages to beat her. And it's like, that book, and I would catch hell for it, even sometimes to this day. I always call that the inferior Captain America. You know how they were doing the superior Spider-Man and the infamous Iron Man? Yeah, that should have been the inferior Captain America, because they did every goddamn thing they could. I barely made it the first 6 issues, and I was like, I refuse to pay for this shit. It is a monthly dose of inferiority. You can take this shit and cram it up your ass.
Because he was dating Misty Knight, and she was slapping him around, so...
Yeah, Misty Knight was slapping him
Because
around.
domestic violence is fine if it's
Yeah.
against a dude, apparently.
Well, hell, Misty Knight was slapping him around in his book, and Thor was raping him. The Jane Foster Thor, that was sexual assault, because she didn't ask. When she wanted to taste the chocolate, she took a taste of chocolate. And it wasn't shit he could do about it, because he's a normal guy that talks to birds, and that bitch had the power of Thor.
Yep.
And the sick thing is, they made him like it.
That boils into that thing that's going on a lot in a lot of the comics now is women are superior to men. I thought y'all would fought for equality.
That's getting us off on another subject.
Yeah,
my whole thing in
Let's
that
not
was...
segue into another subject when we're already running.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. My thing in that was, that was just literally, you know, you flip that, motherfuckers would have had all kinds of fucking problems. Hey, Luke Cage has come up and snatched through Storm and slammed his tongue down the throat. You know, Blue Check Twitter
And
would
then
have
she
had...
liked it.
Yeah, and then she liked it.
Yeah.
Hell, you can't have Star Fox in the damn story now, because, hell, he was based off goddamn Cupid. And he acted like Cupid.
Well, his name was Hero.
Yeah. And you can't have him because he's problematic, but yeah. Take the Negro. Oh, you know, all black dudes want a white girl. Don't worry about it. He liked it. She's blonde and Nordic. Fuck it.
Anyone else have any kind of last little...
No, we can
That's
save
right
that
there.
kind of stuff for round 2.
Yeah, it's probably enough. I don't have much to say about the 70s and 80s of comics.
Really? How come?
I wasn't born yet. I was a zygote.
There's something I didn't mean to bring up. I guess this would be in the 90s. When Milestone Comics was big the first time. You had an issue of Static that the cover was him sitting on the couch kissing his girlfriend. And they had, and this was, this was Milestone, was a, predominantly black owned, produced. But DC was publishing it.
Yep.
And DC threw a fit. Because it was 2 black teenagers kissing on the cover of a magazine. they wound up putting a second cover on it that basically zoomed in where you could just see their heads. You know, you had like a heart cut out or something where you could see kind of their heads on the inside cover.
Black love is creepy. Creates more black people. Can't have that.
You know, and that was as late as the 90s.
Look, it's a... Oh, God, they're going to make more of them. It's like we're killing them for nothing. What? Shit.
So anyway, we are out of time. There's obviously a lot more that could be said on the subject.
And even get to the point of them passing Storm around like a joint.
Yeah.
What? She was with Thor. He was blonde, Nordic.
She's the pretty slave. Storm in X-Men, yeah, when you read her, she's the pretty slave. You read about slavery, the one damn thing you didn't want to be was pretty. Because you got to be the party favor. Storm has been the party favor in X-Men, truthfully, until Priest got a hold of and cleaned her the fuck up. That's the reason I could not stand Storm most of my comic book life until Priest got a hold of her. And they had a Kissing Panther on the cover of a book, and I bought it just because, like, she with a brother? Since when? Because they passed that child around like a joint. Every white mutant near X-Men gets a turn at Storm. That's not...
Dr. Doom was
And
after
Dracula.
her, Dracula was after her.
Doom's had her, Dracula's had her, Archon's had her, Wolverine's had her, Cyclops has had her. She was dating Wolverine and Nightcrawler at the same time before Priest got her and cleaned up. Cable's had her. I mean, Forge has had her. They literally passed Storm around like a joint. Jean Grey is the woman that you have multiple men want, but everybody don't have her. Storm, everybody has her. Everybody gets a look at Storm. Everybody. Hell, they tossed off with some cat, what was his name? Wave Rider or some shit in Extreme X-Men. You had some blue dude. Yeah, everybody succeeds.
The guy that sounds like a surfboard character.
He was.
Oh,
Yeah.
no!
Yeah, he had his mutant power was like he could, I can't remember if he did warp gates with a surfboard, but yeah, he was an Aussie dude that was so beneath her that he shouldn't have had a shot in hell, but he was white in X-Men and she was the chocolate fantasy. That was the X-Men's big thing about when they hooked up with T'Challa. There was a whole lot of pushback there because she was with a black guy and a queen. Can't be the chocolate fantasy because, you know, they immediately went and hooked up with the family dog, which no woman ever goes, I could be queen, or I could hook up with this scroungy motherfucker that lives in the woods and don't wash his ass. Who am I going to choose?
Wolverine, if you're wondering who's referring to as the family dog. I'm not arguing. I'm just making sure people know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And before you go over it, no. It is documented in X-Men books that Wolverine smells like a dog because he don't wash. He don't always remember to wash. Hell, that even made the Marvel Ultimate Alliance video game. Is you have Spider-Man when they wake up, when they all get like killed, they wake up in this thing. You have Spider-Man going, "Is that dog? Wolverine?" And Wolverine's standing there. Yeah. Beast has talked about how Wolverine smells like a dog, and that's another hairy motherfucker.
Yeah.
You left the king for that shit. Shit.
So anyway, we're going to try to finally wrap up because I think we're running 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes late by this point. So this has been, our discussion as much as we could cram into our time slot anyway, on racism in comics. Again, I have been your host for the day, The Experience, some call Jason, and with me,
The Todd Father. It didn't fit because this shit is really racist.
there's a lot of information to
There's a
cover.
lot of racism.
CDO 113, I agree with him.
And the token learning one, Tarky.
And we will see you next time.
Peace.